Yeah, so I would say that start learning about the technology because it's going to be the future. And if you want to be employed, then you need to learn technologies like blockchain, AI, and ML. Else, machines will take over.
Thank you for finding us. Like us, you are the growing gang of curious people keen to understand what the future holds. I, Eddie Avil, am the host of Change I Am Possible podcast, a platform and a community for disruptors, innovators, entrepreneurs, policy, change makers, impact investors, dreamers, and the engineers who are working on building a tomorrow. My effort will be to probe and ask the most contextual and relevant questions, even at the risk of sounding stupid. The fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and exponential technologies stands to disrupt all industry verticals. Choice we make today will chart the trajectory of individuals, institutions, enterprise, governance, and society at large. Future demands us to be brave and bold. So let's walk together as one into this new world. A world of all-encompassing possibilities, leveraging technology, the tool that's redefining what it means to be a human. Let's challenge our traditional and linear mindset. Let's challenge the word impossible. Because if you break it down, the word itself says, I am possible. Sharat Chandra is an author, keynote speaker, blockchain evangelist, and educator. He also advises blockchain startups in identity management and FinTech spaces. He's also the President India chapter for Government Blockchain Association. I wish you enjoyed this conversation.
So blockchain is this big technology which I am extremely in awe about, because I think it holds potential to change the future, because I like the decentralized word into it, because that's something which is so dynamic. If it does that, eventually it'll be so cool. So, but there's a lot of these negative media around blockchain because of maybe like a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Could you share more light on what blockchain is and then why the negative media around it?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. And I think there's a lot of negativity associated with crypto, but not necessarily blockchain.
Right.
And we need to divorce these two main components where Bitcoin just happens to be one of the use cases of blockchain. And there's some bad players who got into the system early on. They made some money. They, in fact, made others to make some more money. And in the process, there were some, just because there were some bad actors into the system, some people lost money and there's so many scams. That's how it got a bad name. But even if you look at crypto, especially the tokenization part where, especially the micropayments, let's say if you're reading, if you like to read Reuters or Wall Street Journal, they will ask for a subscription, maybe monthly or weekly, right? How about you don't want to pay them a monthly subscription just by pay per article basis, right? Let's say it's 60 cents, but you can't do that transaction because most of the transaction fee will be more than actual subscription for that one particular article.
Right.
So tokenization or crypto can really facilitate that micropayment and help the content creators get more money out of it, and you as a user can really pay for what you actually want to read or want to watch, right? So it has, especially the crypto part of it, if used properly, it can disrupt the way content is being consumed or how content publishers can make more money out of it, whether they can really cut out the middlemen in the process. Let's say you want to release an album, right? You really don't need to approach Apple Music or Spotify. You can get onto a decentralized music sharing stream. And there's a company which is already doing it. It's called InMusic. So,
Exactly.
Let's say you want to create some music and you want to reach your target audience. You can do that without actually involving a third party or a publisher or a promoter.
Right.
You don't need a Sony or Universal to really market your piece of work to your audience. It can be done through a decentralized platform where you get money out of it, how many people have listened to your song or watched your video.
So you mentioned about the token part. So can you explain more about blockchain? So a layperson can get it?
So to put in simple terms, a blockchain is a decentralized distributed ledger technology. Imagine a notebook, right? And imagine as a magical notebook where each of the pages, they represent nodes where all the lines on the pages are the transactions. So in a notebook, you have all the pages and the numbers are there, right? Let's say in a notebook, you have 1 to 100 pages. So all these pages are linked to each other.
Right.
Now let's imagine that these pages are on a blockchain where all the pages represent nodes, and nodes will store some of the transactions. So that even if, let's say, if you tear out one page, you can get to know, okay, this page has been taken off. Right. And the distributed nature of the technology makes it really impossible to do that change without letting other participants know.
Right.
So that if there's a change which has been done, it can be flagged by other people and it can be discarded.
Yeah, brilliant analogy. I really like it.
Yeah.
So tell me, has the RBI ban kind of impacted the entire industry as such because the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency ban?
I think there's a lot of confusion or misrepresentation the way RBI has issued a circular regarding dealing with cryptocurrencies. RBI doesn't say that we are banning cryptocurrency. They're saying that anyone who is dealing with crypto assets through legitimate banking channels, be it your bank account, be it your credit card, those are unlawful. Right. It doesn't say that you cannot do it. If you're using the current Indian banking channels to transact in crypto, that's unlawful and they will freeze the account. That's what they're saying. They're not saying it's illegal. And they have just said that it's not a legal tender. That doesn't mean that it's an illegal tender. They just do not recognize that tender. Right. That's what they're saying. And again, that was a circular. Now there's a Department of Economic Affairs headed by Subhash Garg, and that committee is going through the various recommendations by different currency bodies and other players in the ecosystem who really want to push for not a blanket ban, but again regulate that space where you have KYC, anti-money laundering checks, so that you can make sure that whatever money is coming in, it's accounted for. It's not black money. That's what even the RBI is worried about. Right, because since it's a decentralized system where you do not know who actually is putting money, especially if you're doing on a public blockchain. Right, so there are two types of blockchain, public as well as private. So public, the participants can be anonymous. They can choose to disclose or not disclose their identities. But in a private one, you have to identify yourself. For example, let's say if you're using maybe Adobe Photoshop, right? You need to really publish your credentials. Okay, this is my user ID, I'm using it. Adobe will get to know who is using that particular software. So in a closed network, the participants are known. In a public, participants can be unknown or known, anonymous. So RBI is worried about the anonymous part of the transaction. People might pull in black money, right? And it can also lead to terror financing.
Exactly.
That's what RBI is worried about. But again, a lot of the circular has been misrepresented. The government doesn't have any full-fledged plans of banning it. But again, they want to regulate it so that you don't have any other crypto scam coming up.
So you said that there's the government body now which is going to be especially looking at blockchain. So is there any initiative that they're looking at, or at this point in time it's just a regulatory body that are they looking at doing something to drive the ecosystem?
Yeah, so there's some people, for example, there's an eminent law firm called Nishid Desai Associates. So one of the lawyers, Jaideep Reddy, he's leading the case for crypto guys, and he's representing the people who are excited about cryptocurrency. And he's putting forward the recommendations. What are the areas which need to be regulated, not a blanket ban, and why crypto, especially the tokenization part, is important for even the content economy.
Do tell me something more about your government blockchain association. It's based out of US, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So government blockchain association.
And what's your role?
So GBA, or Government Blockchain Association, is a global not-for-profit organization which helps governments across the globe understand and implement emerging technologies like blockchain, as well as AI and ML. GBA is present in more than 100 cities across the globe, and in India we are present in Ahmedabad, Bombay, Calcutta, Delhi, Hyderabad and Pondicherry. And we have more than 15 startups working as part of the GBA ecosystem, where the Mumbai chapter team, they have done some good amount of work in AI and ML. And put that on blockchain. They have done some work in FinTech space as well, especially when it comes to digital onboarding and KYC. And we, as part of GBA, do organize events, conduct workshops, training, so that we can spread the literacy around all emerging technologies, including blockchain. People should know what exactly it stands for, where they can use blockchain. Blockchain cannot be a solution for everything, right? So what are the areas where they can use it, and how to establish the legitimate business need for your requirement, with whether you need blockchain or not, and help them with development, creating POCs, pushing that to governments so that they can have a look at it and then decide upon how they can solve problems of governance. What
are the use cases, like real world use cases, which you have come across, which you feel it's really impactful and it's going to really help?
Okay, I started GBA India in December last year, and when I started in December, a unique use case came up. In West Bengal, they started issuing birth certificates on the blockchain.
Right.
So there's a new Kolkata Municipal Development Corporation.
Right.
They started having the newborn babies in that particular month. I'm not getting the month right, maybe October or November.
Right.
So the babies born in that particular month, those certificates were issued on the blockchain, so that no one can go back and tamper that.
Right.
In India, it's very easy to get a birth certificate, and you can change your dates depending upon numerology or whatever you believe in, right? Some people might alter the dates just to so that they can increase their applying age for government jobs, right? So it's a very common phenomenon.
Right.
But it also leads to a situation where people can fudge birth certificates to get certain benefits, be it scholarships, or they can even fudge their caste credentials just to fall in certain category and apply for government jobs. So there's a legitimate need to put those records or all your vital records, not only a birth certificate, but your even let's say driving license, your marriage certificate, everything has to be in an environment where it's tamper proof. No one can go back and change that, not even you for that matter, right? So that a person who is the right recipient of a subsidy or even let's say the dole of the government, he should receive that. No middleman can really take out that benefit from you.
This is completely very interesting because I know about this person. I think the guy's name is Bob. He's working on something called as identity management, because the way the future is moving, AR, VR, MR and AI, there is going to be an identity crisis, because so yeah, I mean, I see a very good use case over there. So what about, I mean, globally, what are the initiatives that you guys have done, something which is like really cut through and is really prominent? Is there anything?
Sure. So now talking about identity management, right? So GBA Mumbai team, they are one of the implementation partners of GBA, and they have developed the MVP or minimum viable protocol for Earth.id, so that your credentials, and it can be your birth certificate, can your voter ID or Aadhaar, can be put on the blockchain, and really you don't really need to share that information directly, but in fact you can share whatever is necessary to establish your credentials. For example, let's say if you travel to London and you want to book an Avis or any Hertz car rental, right? They will ask for a passport or visa. They will take some document to verify that, okay, you are the right person to rent that taxi, right? But what happens to that information once that person already has taken a piece of your passport or whatever, right? You don't have any control over that. So we have, when I say we, GBA Mumbai chapter, what they have done is they have created a product where your credentials, your vital records can be stored on the blockchain, and you can using a public key and private key authentication mechanism can establish your credentials and access services. Or depending upon your behavior, or trust score can be generated, which is similar to like a Google review score, right? Or maybe your CIBIL score, depending upon how you're transacting or how you're paying your bills online, depending upon how legitimate use you're using of Earth.id, its trust score will be used, which can be used by different parties in the ecosystem to access or identify yourself. Let me give another example. Let's say, as of now, Amazon wants to sell a piece of merchandise to people in the age category of 25 to 30, right? So how do they get this data from? They might be buying the data from likes of Facebook or Amazon itself, right? So when I sign up for Amazon or Facebook, I give them access to my own data, but I am not sure who they are sharing this data with, right?
Exactly.
So using blockchain or self-sovereign identity management solutions, where Earth.id is a part of, you can have a complete control over the way data is being shared with whom, and within a time-bound limit. Let's say if I'm giving Amazon access to my data, let's say my date of birth or my gender and my behavior or shopping habits, only for 2 days, right? When they have some promotion going on for, let's say, some athletic equipment, whatever, right? And I can take back that access. They don't really tend to keep that particular data in their own data warehouses. So what blockchain can really do is, it can give the right of data ownership back to the user. Right now, it's with Amazon's, Google, and Facebook of the world, right? They have data they are using in the way they see fit, right?
And they're monetizing it, and there's a possibility of monetizing your personal data, right? With
yes,
blockchain.
They might be harvesting your data, and you're not even sure who they are sharing that data with.
What it does.
Now, there is a concept of data monetization. Let's say Amazon wants to have a look at my data. They need to pay me some amount of money, maybe X, maybe some tokens or points, right? just to see my data. As of now, Facebook is making money off my data or your data, right? So data monetization can really happen, and it can also bring down the costs of doing business in India, right? Now, Amazon or Facebook or any, let's say, e-commerce player, they need to buy some data, right? Even an emailing list data needs to be bought by someone else, right? So that aspect can be monetized, and it can be used to reward both the user as well as a service provider like, say, Amazon.
Right. Lovely. So besides these use cases, I mean, what are the other use cases which you have come across which you think have been really interesting and can have like a very good impact? Can you talk about any other?
I would say the land registry on blockchain, where the Telangana government, they have done a pilot. Because there's a lot of discrepancy in the way land records are being maintained. A same piece of land can be sold to two different people, right? Because it's very easy to bribe people in the municipal bodies and get a new registration certificate, right? Now, it's very important to have land records on blockchain because World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index has registering a property one of the main parameters where a country is being judged on. Georgia is a country which has implemented land registry on blockchain for its entire land database, and they now rank 7th. India is at 77, if I'm not wrong, right? So it's really it's a compelling reason why we should have land records on blockchain, so that you can weed out the bad actors, right? Make registering a property seem easy, right? And it can also bring down the cost of maybe land ownership, right? As of now, if you look at any property market, right, most of the prices are speculative, right? The inventory or the open inventory or unused inventory in cities like Mumbai or Bangalore, it's always on the higher side, but still people are homeless or people don't have their own homes. They're still living in rented premises. So that part can also be brought down, as in the cost part of it can be brought down if you can bring in more transparency through land records and blockchain.
Lovely. So I heard that Estonia was one of the first government which is like exploring blockchain, and even Dubai is driving it. I mean, do you see that? I mean, should India be driving this conversation? Is there some organization? Are you actually looking at possibly speaking to the government?
So the government already has a body. It's called Niti Aayog, or the Planning Commission, the think tank for the government, where there are people from these emerging technologies like, say, blockchain, AI, and ML, and they're experts in their own field. They are advising government on a regular basis. So we work closely with them. We do projects with them, and also so they know what's needed, how government can really take that step. But again, it also comes down to the willpower, right? The political will, rather than the technical feasibility part of it, right? If you want to do it, you can do it. For example, let's say linking voter ID and Aadhaar. It's as simple as it sounds, right? But no one is going to do it because so there's a more like a political willpower. There are right people in the government who are actually vouching for these causes, that what is the future and how blockchain or emerging technologies can really bring a lot of value to the nation as a whole. But again, it also depends upon the willpower. But if people in general or the most active players in the ecosystem, if they start speaking about it, make the right noise, the government has to sit up and take notice. Now, many people are speaking up against the crypto ban, so-called crypto ban, right? So the government really sent a delegation to Switzerland, Zug, where Switzerland has one of the best practices when it comes to crypto. They have a very good, they're the gold standard in crypto regulation. So Indian delegation from Niti Aayog, they went, a Telangana minister, officer in special duty handling IT and IT department in Telangana government, she went there. Right. And some people in the blockchain ecosystem, they also went there. So they have gone there, they've studied what's the best practice, how they can implement that way back in India. And hopefully we should see some positive action on the ground.
Right. So the banking sector and the finance sector has been adopting blockchain in some. Do you know of any use cases? Is in India looking at that? Do we have any startups over here who are pushing this conversation forward? Some interesting startups.
So last year, bank chain was formed where close to 22 banks signed up, and it was led by SBI.
You talk about
India, yeah. So bank chain, SBI led that consortium where 22 banks joined, and they agreed to share their data so that you don't have fugitives taking money and flying off to London, right? But it actually never hit off the ground. Because see, banking itself is It's a hyper competitive cartel, right?
Yes.
Hyper profitable cartel.
Centralized.
Yeah, it's completely centralized. You have a lot many people, lot many lobbies with vested interests. They are averse to that change because they might be losing money, right? Banks they thrive on transaction costs. If blockchain were to come into banking system, right, the transaction cost will go down dramatically. Completely, right? You actually don't need a third party like a bank to even transact. For example, let's say it can be, it's a possibility that if you want to send money to me, you can do that through maybe a Google Pay. Right. But at the back, there's a bank doing it. But we can take, even if we take bank off the equation, it can be done. If we're doing on a decentralized system where you know me, I know, and I know you, and we can transact money or transact anything which has value, and no one needs to know about it. Or maybe someone who just needs to validate that, okay, these two people were on the system and they transacted this amount of money just for record keeping sake. That's it.
So earlier it was these banking industries who have been running the financial ecosystem, you know. So right now it seems like the tech industry is taking over. I mean, Facebook is starting with their own token, Libra. It's a stable coin. So could you share some more light on that?
Yeah. So I would say now banks today, they are more like technology powerhouses. Citibank has more engineers than what Google has. That's a fact, right? Not many people would know. So. And that's why even social media companies like Facebook, now their project Libra has been backed by PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. So they have created a reserve where their currency, the Libra coin or the Facebook coin, will be pegged against the dollar and euro, but they will have a reserve to fall back upon. Now, Bitcoin as of now doesn't have a reserve to fall back upon. There's no underlying asset, but Libra has a pool of money given by Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, a lot many other players, So the value of Bitcoin is driven by speculation. They don't have any underlying assets. So that future is still uncertain, right? Bitcoin futures may go up and down, but when you're pegging something against a dollar, your price will fluctuate depending upon the fluctuations in the base currency, be it dollar, right? For example, petrol and US dollar are interlinked. If the price per barrel of petrol goes up and down, there will be a corresponding effect on the US dollar price. Similarly, if US dollar appreciates or depreciates, and what impact will have on the euro, the same impact will have on the, let's say, Libra coin. So there's a guarantee, at least some sort of guarantee where you know what is the underlying asset. Your money will not go for a toss because you already have reserves of, let's say, X million. In the kitty. So stable coins, because they have some underlying assets. So they are more trustworthy as compared to Bitcoin. That's my personal view. But again, there are some people who might argue against it, and they might be right in their own space. That's okay.
So what are your views on the future of blockchain? I mean, do you see in the near future with, at this point in time, the technology is growing exponentially. Autonomous is taking over jobs, and in the near future, maybe millions are going to be jobless. There's going to be UBI, which is going to be in play. Possibly barter could come in play because there'll be people who are jobless, right? I mean, so do you see like a blockchain playing like a major role over there where it could possibly be maybe pushing out the fiat currency out of the picture? Do you see a token economy in the near future as a possibility?
Not in the near future, but again, maybe a distant future it can be.
Because that's the idea, right? Decentralized. I mean, that was the thought when Nakamoto, whoever made
Satoshi,
so made that was the vision behind it, right? So do you see something like that? I mean, is it inevitable or it's not possible? I mean, that you
I would say there will be an equal mix of fiat as well as token economy. The reason I will say that because any which ways we are moving towards digital payments, right? The number of times you would have used cash for traveling from point A to point B has gone down dramatically. You can use Google Pay or PayPal and get it done, right? But there will be, for example, what about section of people who don't have access to even banking, or they're not literate enough to even transact on Google Pay or Paytm for that matter. So for some section of people, fiat currency will still be in circulation. I'm talking about the Indian context, but again, it can change. It's subject to change as well. Even people in the villages, they are using Paytm more than what I have ever used in my life, right? So even that's bound to change, and the reason why it's bound to happen because the cost of printing money is going to go high. Every day, the paper is getting costly, right?
Right.
Right. Now, if you buy a notebook, it might cost you maybe 60 or 50 bucks. But way back in my days, we used to just pay 5 rupees or 10 bucks to get a notebook, right? The cost of printing money is going to high. Cost of counterfeit money will also go high if you still keep on using fiat currency.
Right.
But if you use digital currency or a cryptocurrency, which is nothing but a digital asset, you can track back the origin of that money movement, right? Or the fund transfer. Let's say if I'm paying you X amount of money, the auditors will get to know, okay, this money came from this account, it moved to the wipe account, right? So it's easier to establish money trail, and accountability of money will be much more easier. You can track back on black money as well.
Right. But how safe is this blockchain? Just a couple of days back, I just read about a huge hack done by some Russians. So how safe it's supposed to be safe, right? Because that's what blockchain. That's the idea behind it, is right.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but then there has been these recent hacks where people have managed to break through into the blockchain system.
Okay. Now. They have not actually managed to break through a blockchain system, but a cryptocurrency exchange, which was public.
Right.
So initially, during our conversation, I talked about public and private blockchains.
Right.
So public blockchains, they are low on security. Right, because everything is open source. You don't have any control over people joining it. Right, people can game the system. Right. So most of the cryptocurrency exchanges, they're built on Ethereum, which is public blockchain. Now, there are private blockchains like, say, Hyperledger.
Right.
And IBM is behind Hyperledger and the Linux Foundation. So IBM and Linux Foundation, they have hundreds of years of expertise, right? So they have a very strong ecosystem. It's very difficult to hack their systems. There's a concept of decentralized exchanges or DEXs. Now, none of the DEXs have been hacked because anything which is centralized is prone to hacking. Decentralized components will not be as easy to hack. Right. So there has to be a distinction when we talk about cryptocurrencies, exchanges getting hacked and blockchains getting hacked. But again, just to let you know, the cryptography which makes transactions secure on blockchain, it can also be hacked using quantum computers, but that's the future. That's the future. No one has been actually been able to do it, but that's a possibility. And just to counter that effect, we have quantum blockchains now, quantum cryptography now. So for everything, we have right systems in place so that we can get rid of any bad elements or someone who wants to hack it.
Right. So I'm seriously very excited about the future, because I mean, all of these technologies eventually going to converge, and it's going to impact humanity and help us be that get into the future, in a better way. So tell me, what is GBA doing? I mean, what are the impact since you guys started over here, and what are the challenges that you guys have faced over here in setting up GBA? And what's your vision also? I mean, what do you want to do eventually in the future with GBA?
So I will start with what we are doing at GBA. So we conduct events. We do, as I discussed earlier as well, we do training. We try and speak to people in the ecosystem. We conduct training workshops in universities, colleges. I'm doing a workshop with IIM Bangalore in July. And we have done multiple workshops with IIT Kanpur guys. So the idea is to spread the information about the technology so that people can know about it, what is the right use case to work on, and what are the do's and don'ts. You can't fit blockchain everywhere. You need to find the right business use case where you can apply, and what are the risks and challenges, how well that can be integrated with your current systems. So we do that, and our plan is to spread the GBA footprint in India. As of now, we are present in all the major metros in India and tier 2, tier 3 cities. But the intent is to go pan-India. Right.
So you want to talk about some interesting Indian startups who are building something interesting in the blockchain space? Yeah.
So there's a Bangalore-based startup called Ega Softwares. So what they have done is they have created a blockchain marketplace for coffee producers. Right, and they've been recognized by Department of Finance and Commerce. So because in coffee production, there are a lot many people who make the middlemen, right? They take most of the profit, and the end farmer gets very less. So, and using blockchain, you can track and trace the origin of a product, right? So they are using that capability, and they have created a online marketplace on blockchain for coffee producers. That's one particular case. Now, food supply chain is one area where the companies like Eka Softwares have done a good amount of job because let's say there's a swine flu, right? Or now what normally happens is people will start culling chickens in the poultry farms, right? But how about if you get to that right information where okay, chicken from X poultry farm is infected and not the entire particular area, right? You can avoid wastage of meat, right? So this is what Walmart is doing. So Walmart has integrated blockchain, IoT, and ML into the supply chain, where they can track and trace what was the origin of a particular food product or a fruit, at what temperature it was stored, how did that food moved from farm to fork. Right. So you can track and trace the origin of food supply, which is real good. You can also remove counterfeit goods in the system, right?
Right. Oh, lovely, interesting. Any international startup which is like really doing some cutting edge work in the blockchain space?
I would say there's one startup. It's called Cosmos. So as of now, we have multiple blockchains, right? So we have public blockchains, we have private blockchains, and they're working in their own spaces. They're not talking to each other. They have created data silos where, let's say, I'm building something on Ethereum and you're building on, let's say, Hyperledger, but you don't have access to what I'm doing, right? Or I'm not willing to share my data with you. Or there's no international or industry consensus when it comes to what are the standards in which blockchains can talk to each other. So there's a company called Cosmos which is building something called inter-blockchain communication standard, which will help blockchains speak to each other.
Nice.
So
Nice.
So, and because interoperability is the future of blockchains. You might have multiple blockchains. There will not be a dominant blockchain in the future. You'll have multiple players, but how do you make sure that these players are talking to each other? So there has to be an international
like an
protocol.
Open source model.
Open source, but protocol. You need to define the protocol, and it has to be non-negotiable and platform agnostic, in the sense no matter what platform you're using, that protocol will still be valid.
So tell me some of your partners. I mean, who are the partners that you have over here in
India? Right. So we have CoinCrunch. They are one of our media partners, and we have IIT Kanpur Alumni Association. So they do startup events, right? And we are trying to build that ecosystem. We are trying to get folks from IM as well, right? And since I discussed about Niti Aayog, right? So we are closely working with some of the principal advisors in Niti Aayog. So we are looking for guidance from Niti Aayog on that part as well.
Lovely. So what is your focus for this year for GBA? I mean, is there any?
So the focus for this year is to move from proof of concept to production. So whatever use cases we have, our intent is to find the right investor and push it into production and showcase some of the use cases to the government and get them to hear our side of story, why it's necessary to implement that and solve problems of governance.
Right, lovely. So you just came from the blockchain summit which happened in Bombay. So I'm sure the community is coming together and the push driving the ecosystem. So any interesting initiatives which has come out of this something that you can share?
So I met a guy. He has an e-commerce use case where he wants to have loyalty reward points on the blockchain.
Right.
And he wants to pay his vendors, resellers, distributors, on time using blockchain. Right. So I will give you an example. Let's say you have a vendor which is based out of, let's say, China, right? And if you want to make a payment to him after the end of the credit period, right? Then if you use the current banking system, then the payment might take 2 or 3 days, because the bank uses SWIFT, which normally takes 2 or 3 days to process an international remittance transaction, right? So that time span can be reduced to seconds using blockchain. So there's a company called Ripple, which is already doing it, right? So it's reducing the remittance turnaround time to seconds from days, and it's quite effective. So more people will have more money to spend, right, and spend that in the ecosystem, and it can drive the economy in the longer run as well.
Right. So, with this blockchain technology, somehow I think, are we overburdening all of these technology? Because, there's so much of expectation, of blockchain, because we think it's going to be the next big thing. It's going to solve the all human problem at this point in time. So, what are your views on it, and what it's going to actually do? Blockchain as a technology, what are you?
I would say blockchain is similar to what internet was, right? So it's just a foundational technology. Its use will always depend upon what are the applications we're building on top of it, right? So Amazon or eBay, they happened because internet was there, right?
Right.
And we'll have multiple or good platforms coming up in blockchain as well. So it all depends upon what is the direction you are looking at and what your preferences are, what exactly you want to achieve. You want to drive down costs, you want to minimize operational risks, or you just want to go for blockchain because it's a fancy word.
Right. So blockchain also has like a downside, because I mean it's been said that to do like a per one transaction it takes about 700 kilowatts of energy. So you want to share some light on that, the energy consumption of blockchain?
Okay, so that's specific to public blockchains where you need mining to add a new block, and that's not a viable model, right? Because energy is limited and mining is energy intensive. It will generate a lot amount of heat. So people are moving beyond that consensus mechanism where you have to mine to add a new block. And there are different other agreement mechanisms like a proof of stake. Let's say I have 30% stake, then my voice will be heard lesser than, let's say, if you have 70% stake. It's like who has the majority stake and majority or majority wins, right? Something the proof of stake kind of mechanism. So mining is not Bitcoin mining is not a feasible idea. People are moving ahead beyond that.
Is there any message that you want to give to like our listeners? And do share your moonshot. Like what's your moonshot? Your future vision for GBA or yourself?
Yeah, so I would say that start learning about the technology because it's going to be the future. And if you want to be employed, then you need to learn technologies like blockchain, AI, and ML. Else, machines will take over.
Right. Wow. What a note to end on. Yeah, I think the technology is in an exponential space. Everything, I mean, right from blockchain, AI, synthetic biology, everything is going on an exponential space. And I guess we need to understand this technology and merge with the technology or take and help of the technology and grow, because that's the only way we'll move ahead. So on that note, I'm going to end for today. I'm going to have all the information of Sharat below. You can reach him out, and if you like what you hear, please press the subscribe button. I'm going to see you next time. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.